Hi, it's Tacticus, and with upgrade 1.33, the game now features 4 campaign events. In this video, I'm going through why you should choose this campaign event above the others, which enemies you face, which fighters you can use, and what both of those mean for your strategy. I'll also brush in which characters you should invest. The gameplay part of this video focuses on the normal part of the campaign event, but I'm sure my observations on the fighters could be useful for some mid-level players too. Should you be a veteran and watch this, I really appreciate you being here. It would be great if you added to my strategies with your own in the comments. If you don't know yet what a campaign event is, and how it distinguishes from a normal campaign, please watch this companion video I made for beginners. The Death Guard campaign event is the 4th campaign event we have so far. You pilot the Adepta Sororita in a struggle against the Death Guard on board of a Space Hulk. Those, if you aren't familiar, are the carcasses of great warships still floating in space, derelict but full of precious materials and old technology, so ripe for plunder. As a first, this campaign event contains a new gameplay mechanic: doors. In some battles you can find those yellow door patches on the ground, which, when you step on them, will open an adjacent room. You can't see what's in that room beforehand, so need to be careful how and when you open them. Opening them too late, of course, means not being able to get the lightning victory bonus, which is of course even more important in campaign events. That is a cool mechanic, although I can't see the enemies I'll face in battle beforehand. The enemies always stay the same and at the same locations, so I'd appreciate it if the fighters were visible after 3-starring, just for use in home screen events. I want to know where those pesky nurglings hide. Why should you choose this event? If you're new, this event features at least one fighter you already own, Vindicta, and possibly have invested in, because she's good at helping with the normal campaigns. Click here if you want to learn more. The normal part of the campaign event goes up to rare rarity, and while you can borrow appropriately leveled fighters, using your own Vindicta would give you more rewards. Roswitha and Isabella are both available in the guild raid shop, where you would be able to get them quite fast if you focus on them. Silver 1 is a good goal for early players for Vindicta, as an ally for the other campaigns, as well as for Isabella for multiple purposes anyway, so choosing this campaign sets you up on a path you should go anyways for roster progression. The characters you can unlock during the campaign are the Death Guard. The last one you unlock there, Rodbone, is a very useful fighter, being the only Chaos Healer at the time of writing this, who himself is tenacious enough to survive in battles and can resurrect even overkilled allies. The upgrades and badges you earn are primarily for the Death Guard, but can often be used on the Black Legion as well to help you with your Fall of Cadia campaign if you haven't progressed it far yet. They can also be used to bolster Maladus, who you unlock playing guild raids anyways, and he is a very versatile and hardy fighter that especially shines in horde modes where he can kill multiple enemies a turn, and who together with Rodbone builds quite the dream team, being very hard to remove together while still doing a lot of damage. Investment in both is a good idea, for multiple game modes and the Fall of Cadia campaign. For the veterans, the Extremis campaign contains the Venerable Battle Marks, this campaign being the only one to feature this mythic upgrade, although it will take heavy investment to get there, as well as the mythic shards of the Death Guard characters. Before getting to the fighters, I'd really appreciate if you used my referral code, BAD60ADU, in-game to earn yourself 100 Blackstone and reward me with various rewards depending on which levels you reach. It would really help me out. Also, if you like this style of video, I'd love if you subscribe to this channel. You might have heard this from other YouTubers before, but yeah, actually around 70% of my viewers are not subscribed. You wouldn't want to miss a video, would you? Let's have a look at which enemies you fight first. First off, there's the humble Traitor Guardsman. weak defenses, but a fairly hard-hitting attack. Their Let the Galaxy Burn passive got changed to Crazed Focus recently, enhancing their damage against enemies on hex effects. That can be fire, contagion, razor wire, you name it. Their battle fatigue gives them a chance to flee after an adjacent enemy has been killed, with a higher chance if you've overkilled their comrades. This means you will often try to kill other enemies next to them first, to get a chance to remove more enemies from the equation quickly. All other enemies in this campaign belong to the Death Guard proper, so feature their faction trait Contagions of Nurgle. This not only makes them immune to contagion hexes, which will in turn reduce your armor by 30% if you stand on them, but also is a trait that starts out with a range of 1 around them, which increases to 2 hexes in round 3 and 3 hexes in round 5, and reduces your armor by 20%. If you are within 2 or more auras, this is increased to a 40% penalty, really bringing the hurt and making armor less valuable in this campaign. Then there's the other mobs, Poxwalkers. They sport even less of a defense than Traitor Guardsmen and die really easy, but deal a ton of damage. It is physical damage, which under normal circumstances would only have a 1% pierce ratio, but as discussed, your armor will be reduced, especially in the later battle rounds anyways. And the worst about those guys, if they kill a non-mechanical unit, so any of your fighters, they will transform them into another Poxwalker. Focus those down first. They die fast and have the scariest immediate damage potential, and you really don't want them snowballing, so get rid of them. Black Marines are Space Marines dedicated to Nurgle. Their main quality is their toughness. At a lumbering speed of 2, they won't be as flexible, but they have bolters to attack you from range 2. They can also throw a grenade once per battle, dealing high piercing damage to one of your fighters and up to 2 fighters behind them. They don't seem to use those attacks on your fighters on contamination hexes, but it is still a really bad idea to put your fighters on those hexes. Those grenades deal toxic damage, which means that they have a 25% chance to contaminate the hex of any damaged fighters. Get your fighters away there as fast as possible. Their passive, Cloud of Flies, makes them receive 30% less damage while on a contaminated hex, and will have a 70% chance to contaminate a hex when attacked. This means your first attack has to count. Use your heavy hitters first against them to minimize the amount of damage that is subtracted. As resilient fighters, the attack defeating them needs to deal at least twice the damage needed to kill them to overkill them. Otherwise, they'll fall to 1 health first, forcing you to commit another attack you can't use to defeat other enemies. Lastly, the newly added Nurglings are a swarm, so each of your fighters' hits can only remove 1 of their life bars. As they consist out of 4 fighters, the only non-5-piece swarm in the game right now, you need at least 4 hits to defeat them. As demons, they have a 25% chance to block some of the incoming damage against them. They appear on the battlefield via Deep Strike, meaning you can't attack them first round, and they can come down anywhere on their move distance, or wherever on the battlefield not next to your fighters. Try to dispatch them with ranged attacks, as they will explode for 25% of their health and toxic damage, hurting everything but fellow Death Guard units on adjacent hexes and having a chance to spread more contagion hexes. Lastly, their Mischief Maker's passive prevents any fighters hit by them from being healed or revived for 1 turn and has a 25% chance to suppress you to decrease your damage and movement. They do deal pretty little damage comparably though. I almost forgot about the Elite Blightlord Terminator, which is basically Maladus. They are impressively defensive with the Terminator trait, which decreases the damage of the first attack per round against them by 75%. They are also resilient. When they hit you and defeat one of your fighters, the leftover hits as well as a hit of toxic damage are applied to another of your fighters adjacent to the Terminator and the fighter initially hit. Their energy weapons make them penetrate your armor easier. Those guys could be a top priority, but are so hard to remove that I'd rather go for the easier to remove enemies first. They are also just as slow as all the others, and their lack of a ranged weapon means you can play around their passive quite well. When you attack them, hit them first with the weaker attack and then with the Haymaker, so only the lower attack deals reduced damage. For example, hitting an adjacent enemy with Vindicta will make them easier to attack for that turn. While the mission at hand might influence that assessment, I would go into the following order killing enemies when I get the choice. Priority 1 are always the Poxwalkers for the high damage, followed by the Plague Marines with their ability to place new contagion hexes on the field. Then it is either Nurglings or Traitor Guardsmen, depending on how much you actually need to heal. Just be sure to always prioritize the enemies with Traitor Guardsmen next to them for that battle fatigue chance. Those enemies also mean that high armor fighters aren't as valuable as they could otherwise be, and more hits are a good thing to dispatch Nurglings fast. Ranged fighters are also at an advantage because they won't be hit by the Nurglings' explosion and can potentially attack even after opening a door. They will also, especially at the beginning of the battle, not leave themselves open to the contagions of Nurgle effect if they don't kill their target. Let's see who we need to bring and who we have available. For campaigns I told you who to focus on and who wasn't as valuable. As you can borrow fighters you don't have here, and I think all of them are capable, I will concentrate on how they play and how that will influence your battles. If you want to invest in them, you need to target them all to a certain extent, as the level cap means you can't over level 1 to carry you. Isabella is incredibly valuable in a lot of modes, and Vindicta is a good crowd control tool you can safely invest in to help you with the 3 Imperial campaigns you likely want to complete. Roswitha has less of a broad appeal, only really helping in guild raid battles against Mortarion mainly. You need to bring Isabella, Roswitha and Vindicta. Your main faction here is the Adeptus Sororitas, so we should go into their faction trait first. Act of Faith will increase your crit chance by 10% and your crit damage by 25% for every friendly fighter and every enemy fighter defeated. As such, you can do a lot of damage at once. The buff only resets after your fighter actually crits, so if you bring allies, maybe attack with them first to then land some big hits with your sisters later. You might already be familiar with Vindicta, which is one of the first characters you get. She does great damage and can once per battle attack 2 times in a row. Especially valuable is her area of effect, which can hurt enemies next to the initial target, helping you to kill groups of enemies fast for that lightning victory. Beware though, the flames will hurt yourself, so better watch out and target enemies without adjacent friendlies. They will also stop your movement, so try to think whether your attack will cut yourself off from getting to doors for the lightning victory before committing. Her Flamer is the only 4-hit attack of the required fighters, making the most adept at working against Nurglings. And when you set a contagion hex on fire, you can remove the taint to attack the Marines more effectively, if their passive doesn't just put a new contagion on immediately. Isabella is an incredibly valuable member of your team, as she will heal your fighters standing next to her passively for every hit they suffer. Enemies with a lot of weak hits hitting you will actually heal you because of this, but she can't play to her strength in this campaign, as the enemies only deal either only 2 hits, or in the case of Nurglings, prevent the target from healing. While you shouldn't just randomly bunch your characters together, standing next to Isabella is still a net positive for every character not affected by the Nurglings debuff, even if you are more open to Plague Marines grenades. Isabella's active lets you revive a previously defeated ally, in which case they won't count as dead for the rewards. If you have lost a fighter, hold off from defeating the last enemy to use Isabella's active first for the better rewards. Since Isabella will be occupied by healing most of the battle, she will also collect a large buff by Act of Faith at some point, where she can be an incredibly scary melee fighter occasionally. Lastly, Roswitha is an adept fighter in melee as well as at range. Her passive, Contemner's Stake, deals extra damage against Psykers, which is useless save for the end boss in the Typhus fight. A bummer. Her active once per battle deals 2 hits of flame damage and sets the enemy hex on fire. Against demons this will be 4 hits instead, being able to kill a swarm of Nurglings. All demons within 2 hexes of the initial target, including themselves, should they still be alive, will also take extra damage for 2 rounds. So when fighting a big cluster of Nurglings, it can be a good idea to attack a fighter in their midst. Not necessarily Nurglings themselves, to enable Vindicta to do more damage and kill a lot of them. If opening doors, you basically have 2 choices. Open them with a ranged fighter and hope that there will be enemies near enough to actually attack, or, I like that more, why not open the door with Isabella, who won't attack anyways most of the time, and then go into the breach with a more damage-oriented fighter, which is then also protected by Isabella. Only ever open the door with a pure melee character if they have no targets, as otherwise it will rob you of an opportunity to attack. The doors make close combat fighters a tad less optimal here, which we should remember for allies. Another thing we need to keep in mind is pierce ratio. If you don't know how it works, why not watch my video on character stats and combat here. The Sisters of Battle all feature a very low pierce ratio, with Vindicta at 25% doing the most. This means that allies with higher pierce are incredibly valuable against the more highly armored Space Marines. Luckily, all Black Templars come with a power attack with 40% pierce, which is really appreciated. You need to own the allies yourself and cannot borrow them. Nonetheless, I'll go over all of them. The Sisters of Battle also field Morven Val, who is our only fighter with range 3 in this campaign. Her passive allows her to kill multiple enemies in one swoop in close combat, and her active can kill clusters of enemies with exploding grenades. Her melee attack is the highest pierce ratio of the sisters at 40% for the power damage type. Especially for opening doors and dispatching multiple poxwalkers at once, she could be an invaluable ally, and as a mechanical unit she won't even be transformed into a poxwalker herself on dying. That's her biggest weakness though, as she can neither be revived nor healed by any of your fighters in this campaign, and while as a mechanical unit she will ignore contagion hexes, she should be better kept at range. Celestine is a lightning fast unit whose active allows her to swoop down anywhere on the battlefield and take out vulnerable targets. She is our only flyer, being allowed to pass over enemies and hit where it hurts. Her passive summons a Gemini the first 2 times she's attacked, which protect her while adjacent, so she can stay longer in the fight. This is our only summoner in this campaign, but you can't choose when she summons. Up to 2 dead Gemini could be revived by Isabella alongside a character to get the most out of her active. If she's hit by a Poxwalker, the summoned Gemini will become a Poxwalker immediately if it dies. Even as a melee fighter, she can be effective here due to her high mobility, making her able to attack enemies easier after another fighter has opened a door. Rather logically, she can't fly over walls in a closed room, but she's still quite fast. The Sororitas are further helped by the Black Templars, zealous Space Marines happy to join in on any crusade. As they have their own campaign, Octarius Mirror, you're more likely to have those than the 2 legendary sisters, and investing into Godswill, Burkhard or Toriad will be a good idea anyways for their own campaign, so if you have the energy to spare, bringing them to silver for their own good is advised. Godswill is a hammer-wielding destruction machine. His passive lets him hit an adjacent enemy after moving, making him optimal in situations with multiple Poxwalkers to defeat multiple in 1 turn. His active can stun an enemy for 1 turn, making them unable to use their actives, which might come in handy especially in boss encounters. He also has a second line of defense to his armor in his parry trait, reducing incoming melee hits by 1, which halves the damage from the poxwalkers at least. While his melee focus might track him down a bit, he features the rapid assault trait, buffing his first attack and allowing him to move 4 hexes until he attacks the first time. Burkhard is a slow moving tank, both not too optimal for this campaign. He will have a harder time reaching enemies, having to go around corners, and his Gravis armor, needing enemy attacks to go through it twice to harm him, while still making him more defensive than the others, will be greatly reduced by the aura of decay of the Death Guard. When he shoots, he will hurt adjacent enemies to the initial target in range 2, and his active hits multiple enemies with exploding shells, prioritizing kills, which can help to clear the field quickly. Despite his weaknesses, I think he could be an excellent ally for more ranged firepower, especially to remove weaker enemies from the battlefield without hindering your own movement as you do with Vindicta. Ancient Toriad again is a melee character, which buffs your friendly melee attack within 2 hexes to deal an extra hit. This gets your Suita into range of killing Nurglings with 1 attack, making him pretty useful. His active will reduce incoming damage against friendly fighters for a round. He also sports parry, making him a little more survivable. Porter Jäger will be a great asset against poxwalkers if you have him. His parry trait reduces the incoming melee damage by a hit, which could very well be inconsequential as his passive allows him to hit the enemy before they are able to perform a melee attack, sometimes outright killing weaker enemies. His active forces an opponent to be taunted and only fight against him in melee until one of both is dead, which can prevent bosses from using their actives and killing more vulnerable fighters. Lastly, High Marshal Helprecht again has parry, decent stats and some anti-psyker tech. His active can buff the pierce ratio and damage for melee attacks for 2 rounds in 2 hexes around him. We shouldn't focus on melee anyways, and psykers are rare in this campaign. The damage buff would be nice, but Helprecht is pretty niche in guild rates and we have to use Roswitha already. I would stay clear for now. If you're in an early game state, you should use what fighters you have at your disposal as allies. Fighting with fewer fighters can be a detriment, but if your allies lack the strength and die, that could keep you from earning medals, so keep that in mind. It is slightly problematic that of the 7 allies you could use, 3 are legendary characters and 1 is epic, so that newer players will be locked into using the more common Black Templars, Burkhard, Toriad and Godswill. Those are all 3 decent characters to help you, and as you need to invest into them for their own mirror campaign anyways, most players will choose to focus on them. Both Godswill and Burkhard can damage multiple enemies, and Godswill, despite being a melee character, might be valuable. Whether to use Burkhard or Toriad might depend on the map at hand. Burkhard would be great if he can mow down a few low-level enemies early, buffing the Act of Faith chance of the sisters considerably. In longer fights, with a lot of doors, he might be too slow to be used effectively, while Toriad could be great to make Godswill and Roswitha in particular more effective and reduce incoming damage if you can't avoid it once per game. Throwing Godswill forward in battles where you have to be quick can also be a good idea, as you can resurrect him with Isabella later anyways, and deal great damage until then. That's my take on a beginner's guide to the Death Guard campaign event. Do you have anything to add? Let me know in the comments. I'm always happy to hear your ideas. Will you be choosing this event? What do you think of the doors mechanic? If you're a beginner, why not watch some more beginner videos you can see on screen? Should you need further assistance with a particularly hard battle, go visit Nox's channel. He does walkthroughs of campaign events and quests there. As always, thank you for watching and have a great day.